Hey everybody, I just want to pop on and give my thoughts on the latest episode of Star Wars Skeleton Crew, episode 4. Uh, this one finds the crew heading to a planet that at first they think is supposed to be at Atten, and it turns out that it's not. This one really doesn't forward the story, the overall story very much until the very end. But it's more about building characters, specifically the character of Neil. We get a lot of time with Neil and him kind of coming out of his shell a little bit, being, almost kind of moving, like they're gradually moving him almost more like to where by the end, maybe he's more the leader of the group instead of just kind of the wacky sidekick. You have some bits of Fern showing a little more vulnerability, the wall kind of coming down between Wim and Fern. So we're seeing a bit more of the dynamics within the group kind of shift and open, which is really more what this episode is. It's more of a character study in this episode, which works. I think that it was a good way to kind of go about it. The story itself is almost kind of secondary in this episode. There's, it's them on this planet. They go off with one side of a warring faction. Uh, Crimson Jack goes off on his side with 33. They get picked up by the other side. And we don't really see what happens on that side until, the end when, he comes in with the other side's animals. And he's paid off the other side to get them and return them to get the kids back. It felt like maybe there was probably some more there that got trimmed out. And that really is what kind of gets into, again, the problem with these more recent Star Wars shows that really came into focus with The Acolyte and is continuing here, is really the pacing. We get to the end of the episode and we find out that 33 had been there before, that he had destroyed the coordinates to Atten, and the episode ends very abruptly again, which shows that a lot of these are being filmed as though they are Star Wars films. These are being written almost as big long films, and then again they're just going through and arbitrarily dicing them up, because when we get to the end of this one, if you haven't seen it, obviously spoilers, Fern overrides 33's memory. He then reverts back to some original programming from the original captain, telling him to rip anyone limb from limb who goes around asking for the coordinates for Atten. Starts to move towards, he's going to attack the kids. Neil steps up to kind of, redirect him away from the rest of the group. 33 turns towards him, starts to go after him. He gets turned off, disabled, falls on to Neil, not hurting him, and then Neil passes out. And the kids all run over, Neil, Neil, Neil. Oh, he fainted, and then it just cuts. And the funny part about this is there are 3 different ways that you could cut this, where it would have made for a better ending of an episode of a TV show. When 33 is going nuts and then, rip them limb from limb, rip them limb from limb. And then you cut there and you're like, oh crap, are these kids going to make it? That hooks you into the next episode. The other couple ways that you could cut it would be, it plays out much like it did, the way it is, And when the kids rush over and they're, oh, Neil, 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 that's where you cut. You don't cut when they say, oh, he fainted. You cut leaving his status ambiguous. Is he okay? Did he faint? Is, did, like, are we going to find a, like the droid shot a poison dart at him? Like, we don't know. There's a question mark there again, pulling us into that next episode. And then the third way you could have cut it to better suit episodic TV is you go a little further. Neil's fine. They decide whatever the plan is, which I anticipate is they're going to take the coordinates for all the other planets and go hop from planet to planet to see if any of these, have the coordinates for At-Aten. And, the kids go back to the ship. The ship takes off, and that's where you cut, is them leaving the planet off to their next adventure, and then you cut there. I don't know why they've decided that cutting like this, where you're just kind of abruptly cutting these episodes in weird spots, especially when you're pacing this over weeks. You're not doing a binge where you're just rolling right into that next episode. I don't know who's, if this is a decision that is coming down from on high, or if it's just because, the people that are picking to do these shows are writing these, like Star Wars movies, and they aren't getting any direction from producers or Filoni or Kennedy or whoever going, hey, love the script, love the story, but you need to go back and rework these scripts so that each episode works as an episode of TV. Because this is a TV show. You're not giving yourself anywhere to cut to go episode to episode. So they need to really finesse that better, because I think it's losing people. Because for the most part, Skeleton Crew is a good show. It's fun. It's more in line with what I think people want Star Wars to be, which is this kind of fun, swashbuckling adventure. And if there's any commentary, it's under the surface, which, we haven't really gotten to where there's anything overt yet, or anything to really discern as to an overall arching message or, commentary of any kind. But that's the point, is it's under the, if it's there, it's so under the surface that, one, you have to watch the whole show to really get it, if it's there. But, if you look back, especially at the original trilogy, knowing now what George Lucas's kind of social commentary that he had kind of in his head when he did the original Star Wars, you wouldn't know that. And it can be interpreted many different ways. In a lot of the analysis of Star Wars and potential parallels to real world things, when I was younger, before he, came out and was so very clear as to what he was drawing from, which was the Vietnam War and the rebels being kind of stand-in for the Viet Cong, a lot of the analysis was, no, it's the Revolutionary War, and the parallel is the rebels are, the Americans, and the early Americans, revolutionaries, and the Empire is the British Empire, and that was the parallel that was drawn. And it wasn't until much later that we found out that he was drawing more, working out, his own thoughts on the Vietnam War. But that's how it should be, under the surface, not beating you over the head with it. So, I really want this show to succeed because it is more of that kind of true traditional kind of Star Wars, kind of throwback to, George was going back to the serials, Flash Gordon and stuff of his youth. These filmmakers are going, with Skeleton Crew to, stuff like the Goonies and E.T. from their youth. So this is very kind of traditional Star Wars, so I want it to succeed, but I worry that this pacing is structurally harming the odds of success for this show. So we'll see. Again, a fun episode. You know, it's more about the, you know, kind of developing the characters and pushing them forward on their arcs, as opposed to really being super tied in until the very end to the overall story. But it works as a fun little episode of TV, except for, like I said, the wonky pacing. So those are my thoughts on the episode, and I will see you on the next video.